Okay, I'm always kind of bothered when games just don't go automatically into the credits. Begin waffle over the Lord of the Rings music. That's definitely going to get content ID'd. So this game was obviously written by someone who hadn't really read the books, or didn't really care to, or wasn't really bothered by it. The issue with that is something I mentioned at the beginning, was that EA had the rights to the films, but not the books. I think Sierra had the rights to the books and not the film, and they did Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring, but they then didn't go on to do sequels for it, so it was very much kind of like a puzzly game kind of thing, where I think you play as Frodo predominantly, and you're working through it, so I think that's kind of what happened with that. The issue with that meant that if you could... Basically, they could both include stuff that was in both the book and the film, but anything that was added specially for the film could only be included in EA games. Stuff that was really included was only in the book and wasn't put in the film could be used by the Sierra stuff. And it was kind of confusing. The thing is, EA, they did The Two Towers, they did The Return of the King, they also wanted to do another game, so they did The Third Age, this game, which meant that it's kind of weird. I'm, as you can probably tell, I'm not really a huge fan of the final boss being Sauron himself, like the Eye of Sauron. The point of Sauron as being the Eye is that you can't destroy him, you can't kill him. The only way to destroy him is to destroy where his power is, and that's the ring, which is why the Fellowship goes to destroy the ring. That's the point of it. Once again, they've kind of missed the point with that. The combat was good, apart from kind of towards the end where the initiative track was going a bit wonky. I think that's because I was using the Banner of Elendil, which is supposed to stun things, but didn't. So it was kind of thinking they were stunned and they weren't taking actions when they should have been taking actions. So I think it's just kind of that. I like the fact that it's there, because even though there were times when I didn't use it, I could later on, when I kind of really needed to, kind of think, okay, how am I going to work out things? Especially in that last fight, it was really useful to kind of know, okay, well, if I take this action, I'm going to let Sauron take 2 actions or 3 actions on the trot, which I don't want to do. So if I use this slightly weaker attack, I'll let him have only 1 action. So he'll still get the action, but he'll still get the number of actions, but I'll be in between so I can try and work on what he's doing and try and defeat that. So I like that. This is one of the kind of games that I kind of like it. I enjoyed the kind of the mechanisms and the fight and the combat system. It's just kind of the story is a bit weird because they want to stick to the story of the films. And I think it's kind of really good early on where you're trying to find Boromir, where you're going after Boromir is kind of what you think. And then you get to where is the last thing? So you do the mines. That's where it starts to go off. Going into Moria is kind of where it kind of goes off the rails, which is admittedly fairly. Well, it's not brilliantly early. I think getting up to going through the mines, it's so that you can go. Oh look, Balin's tomb, which is destroyed. It's destroyed in the film and the books. It's kind of attacked, so you can't really do that. So that's a bit. Then you've got. After that, you've got. After that, you go to the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, which shouldn't be there if you're there after the Fellowship. But you reach there just as Gandalf's doing it, and it's kind of they wanted to crowbar this extra story in, and I think it probably would have worked better if they'd started if you want to start the way you start, fair enough, but go over, find a pass through over the Misty Mountains if you really must, kind of go that way. You shouldn't go through Moria. Then you could do something making your way to Lothlorien. You're just behind the Fellowship in that regard, and because tonight is like we've got to travel on. By night, these hills will be crawling with orcs, saith Aragorn. Kind of as Frodo is kind of breaking down, is kind of weeping over the death of Gandalf, and so you can have that. Like you're a few hours behind at that point. You're like at most 12 hours behind, and you push through all these orcs. You get to do a scene in Lothlorien if you want to. You push through. Maybe some stuff. You get to Amonhen. You find Boromir. You find. He's like, no, actually, you can't find Boromir because they send him off. So you could always do something like that, where you find him in the river and then you move on. I think it's just they wanted to tie in all the things in the film because they had the rights to it, and it's just this really weird story that is its own kind of world. It's not really Lord of the Rings. And then they're like, oh yeah, it is Lord of the Rings because, oh yeah, Aragorn was involved and we're using clips from the films, and Frodo and Sam, yeah, they still destroyed the ring, but you were the real hero because you killed Sauron. I think it would have been better if they'd had a final area after the Pelennor Fields. You do like a relatively small final area at the Black Gate, and maybe you fight the troll with Aragorn, and he's all in his regalia, kind of, oh yes, King of Gondor and blah blah blah, and so you're kind of pushing through all of that, and you get to that point, and that's the final boss. Is maybe, or if you really want to, why not put yourself on the eagles that attack the Nazgul at the Black Gate? So that could be the final boss. Is this really kind of dramatic scene where you can on your turn you've got your characters have got like certain eagle actions, and the eagles can do certain attacks, which will obviously affect the initiative track slightly. Will affect it more than your attacks, but will do slightly more damage, and you could do different things with it in that regard. I think that's probably what would have been a better finale than fighting Sauron, but Sauron is the big bad. That kind of makes sense. So there's all kinds of different things they could have done that I think would have made more sense in the world of Lord of the Rings. Marching into Mordor, just the six of us, climbing to the top of the Tower of Barad-dûr and fighting the Flaming Eye of Sauron, which is pretty much, that makes no sense. You can't really hurt the Eye of Sauron. That's the point. I'm just ranting about the ending again, which I do find kind of funny, because it kind of, again, there's that kind of missed point of what Lord of the Rings is about, and what it's kind of the same with Denethor. Denethor is meant to be almost kind of the opposite of Theoden, where they've gone through the same thing, where they've seen what's going to happen. They see that the realm as they know it is going to change, and in drastic ways. For Theoden, he sees himself as the last of his house. For Denethor, he also sees himself as the last of his house. Boromir is dead. Faramir is kind of towards the end is dying. But his duty is to wait for the king to come, and he hears that the king might be coming. But he also sees Sauron. These two options: either the realm dies, or the realm is no longer here, no longer is going to be taken over by someone, and this untrained upstart from the north, kind of idea. And Theoden's response is, "My duty is still to go. My duty is still to my people," and he stays on, and he keeps going, and ultimately sacrifices his life on the battle at the Pelennor Fields. On the Pelennor Fields, so that man can prevail, so that Gondor and Rohan can prevail. Denethor's response is that he's going to cremate himself while he's still alive, along with Faramir, who's also still alive, and it breaks him knowing that everything that's happening is everything he has and knows is going to change, which is called time progressing, and the movement forward. So that's kind of what it's about, and for them to make it, it's all about greed, and it's all about his malice, and that's not quite true. He's been shown things by Sauron twisted through the Palantir. So I think I get the feeling that they wanted to do another game. They didn't want to do another. They couldn't really do another one based on the actual plot, because they'd done the Two Towers and they'd done Return of the King, and Two Towers included stuff from Fellowship, and you can't really. There's not much in Fellowship when it comes to kind of combat-y, action-y stuff. Which I think is probably why, for the beginning, we're off doing our own thing until we kind of get to Rohan, and it starts kind of being kind of more, here are sights and sounds from the films. So I think there is that kind of aspect of they wanted to include all these things from the films for that reason. And so they wanted to do the story, but they wanted to do another game from the films, kind of that they had the rights to. But I don't think they got the story quite right. I don't think they really understood what the story was about. And I'm trying to keep babbling over the music, so this video doesn't get content ID'd, but it probably will still do. And there's more people. I could just babble on about other things. I mean, there's so many things that they couldn't have included stuff from just the books is the problem, because I always liked the idea of having Radagast in, but he wasn't in the film, which it's kind of the things like I know I think I mentioned in kind of this series, the Scouring of the Shire. You can't really include that. I'm trying to think if you could have anything afterwards as like a little epilogue, because they kind of had the epilogue before the final battle, before the final boss. Like, oh yeah, Aragorn becomes king. He's actually crowned king, which I don't think he's not crowned king until after Sauron falls. So there's that. But so you could have had that as a little wrap up. You could have had maybe, if you want to go down that route, you could have Aragorn preside over Berethor and Morwen. Kind of, I assume that relationship was that Morwen was Berethor's wife, and when he ran because of the Morgul blade, which doesn't work that way, she was banished and her family was banished from because of dishonor, or something. Is that what happened? I don't know. It's really like, okay, let's think about the characters. We've got Idril, who's kind of Arwen but not, in regard, because it's kind of paced. Okay, I haven't actually watched the films in a while, so I shouldn't be making such criticisms. So you've got Idril, who's basically Arwen for Berethor's Aragorn in that regard. Idril kind of, they fall for each other, but Idril's kind of, oh, my destiny's not with you. I think that's kind of, I think that might be the elven form of, it's not me, it's you, we're breaking up. Because you look at Arwen, and they're going through the credits of the films. They're going through the credits of the, oh, alright, fair enough. Because Arwen gives up her immortality to be with Aragorn. She makes that decision. It seems that Idril decides that she'd rather live forever than spend more time with Berethor. So, alright. Always a fair way of doing it, alphabetical. Oh, this is the film. This is the film cast, because those guys did not appear in this. Or some of these guys didn't. Well, maybe... Oh, right, no, they didn't. Well, some of them did. Oh, they're probably including because, they have all the, they would have had to have included, people from, who they included the films of, I assume. I guess so. So you've got Idril, who then we found Elagast, who was kind of the slightly more ranger thing. The issue with Elagast and, to an extent, Hadhod and Eärendil is they don't really have their personalities don't really come through. Berethor's the main character. Idril is your kind of first romance, who then breaks off when you find out that actually maybe you were married to Morwen. Like, that's how I think it was. I think that's what happened, is we were married to Morwen, and then we forgot because Saruman wiped our memories. And that's what happened, I think is what happened. I don't know. So she finds that something, brain English, so then because of that, Idril, I think it might be that Idril kind of backs out. She comes up with the destiny idea for that reason. And then we're with Morwen. But you don't really get that much personality from Eärendil, Elagast, or Hadhod, other than kind of noble knight rider of Rohan kind of thing. Standard ranger, standard dwarf kind of thing. Like, Elagast to begin with was a little bit kind of, hey, with when he was attacking the wargs and hunting the wargs. I think kind of worked, because it's like, hello lovelies, and attacks the wargs, and it really kind of worked. Kind of as a slightly different twist on the standard ranger, but that didn't really go anywhere. Hadhod didn't really go anywhere from being a standard dwarf, and Eärendil, because he came in late on in Rohan, you don't really get much other than he's a rider of Rohan, which is kind of a problem with characters. And again, I think is a problem with a bit of the writing. I'm not sure what you could do with Rohan, with Eärendil, unless you maybe have him go with Ymir, but then you need to have the actor of Ymir, whose name escapes me. I don't think I've ever known it. You'd have to get him to record in to say, or you could have one of the other riders, kind of maybe under Ymir. Like Ymir, I don't know if there's any dialogue you could have with from Ymir from the films, but you could have him point out someone and say, "Oh, this is the guy we want. We're going to leave this guy with you, just to make sure you don't do anything. Come back to Helm's Deep. We're needed at Helm's Deep." And then you've got Eärendil fairly early on in Rohan, and then he can introduce things about Rohan. I think the game is good. I'm just not entirely sold on the story and the narrative, I fear. I think it's pretty much a way of putting it. It doesn't seem particularly Lord of the Ringsy. It just seems like it's an action game with some Lord of the Rings pictures. To put it in a very kind of blunt way that I've heard about kind of other kind of settings of games, is it's not really that setting. And I think that's kind of the issue. And the game is telling me to shut up. It's about to show... What is it about to show? I don't know.
The world of Middle-earth is changing.
Is this the opening?
War is soon to come to our time. For a great evil has arisen in the east that threatens all of Middle-earth. Join us in our quest. Become our champion. Face the power of Mordor. And help to turn the tide.
Alright. I thought we were going to fight Gothmog at the battlefield. Obviously not. So yes, I think that's... let us end with the introduction, as we call it there. So if you have been watching this series, then, well, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for watching.